In July 2025, thousands of fans in Japan bought tickets to see Saweetie perform live. They made plans, they bought outfits, they showed up at venues expecting to see one of the most recognizable names in American hip-hop take the stage. She did not show up. But here is the part that has turned this story from a simple no-show into something much bigger and much more serious. According to a lawsuit filed against her in May 2026, Saweetie and her entire team did show up in Japan. They used the visas that the concert promoter had paid for, organized, and arranged specifically to get her into the country to perform those 4 shows. They traveled to Japan. They were there. And then, according to the lawsuit, instead of performing at the venues she was contractually required to perform at, she and her team allegedly went and performed at completely different venues for completely different promoters on the exact same dates she was supposed to be performing for the people who had paid her $100,000 and spent hundreds of thousands more preparing for her arrival. A concert promoter company called Moon Dream Production has now filed a lawsuit, claiming over $3 million in damages. They are accusing Saweetie of fraud, not just breach of contract. Fraud. The difference between those two words in a court of law is significant. Breach of contract says you did not do what you agreed to do. Fraud says you never intended to do it, that you took the money knowing you were going to use the resources provided to benefit yourself in a completely different way. That accusation is the center of this entire story, and it is an accusation that Saweetie has not yet publicly addressed since the lawsuit was filed. This is the full story of Saweetie, her rise from Santa Clara to one of the biggest names in hip-hop, the Japan concerts that never happened, the lawsuit that was filed this week, and the pattern of canceled shows and professional controversies that have followed her throughout her career. Before we go any further, subscribe to this channel right now. We post new stories like this every single day, not once a week, every day. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and do not miss a single story. Now let us go all the way back to the beginning. Diamante Kiava Valentine Harper was born on July 2, 1993 in Santa Clara, California. She was raised primarily in the Bay Area of California. Her family had roots in entertainment that she grew up absorbing. Her grandfather is the legendary Bay Area entertainer Bishop Don Magic Juan. Her father is Johnny Harper, who played for the San Francisco 49ers. Her mother is Trinidad Valentine. She grew up in a household that understood what it meant to have a public profile and what it meant to build a brand. She was not someone who stumbled into the music industry by accident. She was someone who had been surrounded by the concept of fame and performance from childhood and who made a deliberate decision to pursue it herself. She went further in her formal education than many artists who pursue music full-time. She enrolled at the University of Southern California and then transferred to San Diego State University, where she studied communications and graduated with a degree. That background gave her an understanding of how messaging works, how audiences think, and how brands are built. Those skills would prove useful when she began building her own brand in the music industry. In 2018, she released her debut single. The song was called Icy Grl. She released it independently without a major label behind her. She posted it to SoundCloud. The song found its audience through the internet with a speed that surprised the industry. Icy Grl was catchy and confident and had an energy that felt fresh in hip-hop at that moment. It spread virally. Millions of people listened. The song became a genuine cultural moment, the kind that happens when the right song meets the right moment and the internet does all the promotional work.
The music industry noticed. She was signed to Artistry Worldwide, a subsidiary of Warner Records. The major label infrastructure that had been watching her numbers now had a formal relationship with her. The Icy Grl brand was aspirational and fun and accessible. She presented herself as someone unafraid to be openly ambitious about wanting success and luxury and who could deliver that message with genuine charisma. Her social media presence amplified everything. She was not just making music, she was constructing a public persona that was coherent and commercially savvy. In 2019, she released her second extended play called Icy. It contained the song My Type, which became one of her biggest commercial successes. My Type reached the top 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was certified multiple times platinum. It introduced her music to an audience that went significantly beyond the base Icy Grl had established. The collaborations started coming. She worked with Post Malone, with Doja Cat, with Her, and with a range of other artists across the hip-hop and pop landscape. Each collaboration expanded her reach in a different direction. In 2021, she released Best Friend, featuring Doja Cat. That song was the biggest commercial moment of her career. It went multi-platinum. It reached the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the song that took her from being a significant presence in hip-hop to being a household name in American popular music. Best Friend had the specific quality of songs that cross demographic lines. It was fun and quotable and had a dynamic between two charismatic artists that people responded to with genuine delight. It was played everywhere. And yet, even as Best Friend was performing at the highest commercial level she had ever reached, there were already signs of something that would become a recurring theme in the public conversation about Saweetie. The canceled shows, the inconsistency, the pattern of professional situations that did not go the way people expected. There had already been stories about concert cancellations before Best Friend changed the scale of everything. Fans at smaller venues had posted about showing up to events where Saweetie was billed as a performer, and either not seeing her at all or seeing a performance so abbreviated it barely qualified as one. These were not isolated incidents. They were a pattern, documented in reviews and social media posts across multiple venues and multiple years. When you are an independent artist without much infrastructure, those cancellations have limited reach. When you are the person behind Best Friend with multi-platinum records and a mainstream profile, those cancellations carry a weight they did not previously carry. They become part of the public narrative about who you are as a professional. Her relationship with Quavo was another element that shaped her public story significantly. The two were one of the most high-profile couples in hip-hop for a period, and then they were not. The breakup became a very public situation, documented partly through music and partly through social media interactions that millions of people followed closely. Her relationship with Premier League footballer Jadon Sancho brought a new dimension of public attention. Sancho plays for Aston Villa and became publicly attached to her in a visible way. He had her middle name tattooed on his neck. That level of public commitment from a professional athlete meant the two of them were being discussed together in entertainment media, in sports media, and in the crossover spaces where those two worlds meet. Then, in October 2025, there was the former road manager situation. A woman identifying herself as Maybach May posted allegations on social media, claiming she had worked as Saweetie's road manager and was owed money for work she had done, including allegedly arranging connections between Saweetie and Sancho. Saweetie's team denied that Maybach May had ever been her manager, describing her as someone introduced through family with no formal professional relationship. Saweetie called the allegations false and defamatory and said she was turning the matter over to her lawyers. But that October 2025 situation was not the last professional controversy that would attach itself to her name, because in May 2026, the Japan lawsuit arrived. Here is the full picture of what that lawsuit alleges. Moon Dream Production entered into an agreement with Saweetie and her touring entity Icy Grl. The agreement was for Saweetie to perform 4 shows in Japan between July 18th and July 26th, 2025. The fee agreed upon was $200,000 for the 4 performances. Moon Dream Production paid Saweetie a $100,000 deposit up front. That's 50% of the total fee, paid in advance before a single show had taken place. Moon Dream Production then did what concert promoters do when they have a confirmed headliner. They organized visa services for Saweetie and her entire team to enter Japan legally. They spent money on merchandise and promotional materials. They spent money on venue arrangements. They spent money on the entire infrastructure of putting on 4 professional concert events across a 10-day period in Japan. By the time the shows were supposed to happen, Moon Dream had invested the $100,000 deposit plus another $100,000 in merchandise expenses and another $200,000 in visa and related costs. $400,000 total committed to making these 4 shows happen. And then, according to the lawsuit, Saweetie and her team used those visas. They traveled to Japan. They were in the country during the exact period they were supposed to be performing for Moon Dream production, and instead of performing at the venues Moon Dream had arranged, they allegedly performed at other venues for other promoters on the same dates. They allegedly used the infrastructure that Moon Dream had paid for, specifically the visa services that allowed them to enter Japan legally to conduct completely separate business transactions with completely separate parties who had nothing to do with the original agreement. When Moon Dream Productions sought to recover the situation, Saweetie and her team allegedly refused. They refused to return the deposit. They refused to compensate Moon Dream for the losses sustained. The total damages being sought in the lawsuit exceed $3 million. That figure encompasses the $100,000 deposit, the lost merchandise and promotional revenue, the visa and administrative costs, and additional damages claimed under the fraud allegation. The fraud allegation is the most serious element of the filing. Under fraud law, the claimant must demonstrate not just that the other party failed to perform, but that the other party never intended to perform from the beginning, or that they obtained something of value through deliberate misrepresentation. If Moon Dream can demonstrate that Saweetie and her team accepted the deposit and the visa arrangements while planning to perform elsewhere, that is a fraud claim with real substance. Saweetie has not issued a public statement in response to this specific lawsuit. That silence may be a legal strategy. Attorneys often advise clients not to speak publicly about active litigation, but it is also the kind of silence that, in the absence of any counter-narrative, allows the allegations in the lawsuit to define the story. This is not the first time the question of professional reliability has been attached to her name. The pattern of canceled and abbreviated shows now exists alongside the Japan lawsuit in a way that creates a cumulative picture. Each individual incident can be explained individually, but when those incidents accumulate over time and then a lawsuit alleges deliberate fraud involving hundreds of thousands of dollars and a 10-day window in Japan, the cumulative picture becomes harder to explain away. The music industry runs on relationships and on reputation. Concert promoters talk to each other. The entertainment business in every country is smaller than it looks from the outside. A lawsuit alleging that an artist took a promoter's money, used a promoter's resources to gain entry to a foreign country, and then performed for someone else while refusing to return the deposit is not the kind of allegation that stays confined to a court filing. It circulates. It becomes part of the conversation when promoters in other countries are deciding whether to invest in international bookings. Saweetie has been working toward a debut studio album for several years. She has released extended plays and singles and collaborations, but the full-length debut has been discussed and anticipated and delayed in a way that itself has become a storyline. The promise of a proper album debut has been made and adjusted multiple times. Fans who have been following her since Icy Grl have been waiting for that body of work for years. The professional controversies that have accumulated during that waiting period have made the anticipation more complicated, layered with questions about reliability and follow-through. The brand was always aspirational. Diamonds, designer labels, the confident assertion that you deserve the best and are not apologetic about wanting it. That is a powerful and appealing identity in hip-hop. But the distance between the brand and the reality of the professional decisions being made behind it has become visible in ways that are now being litigated in court. The people who bought tickets to those Japan shows did not buy the brand. They bought tickets to a concert. The people at Moon Dream Production did not invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in the brand. They invested in a professional commitment that the lawsuit alleges was not honored. The Icy Grl is currently facing a lawsuit that alleges the opposite of everything the brand promises. The brand promises she is the one who demands the best and delivers accordingly. The lawsuit alleges she took what was offered and delivered nothing in return. That contradiction is the real story of where Saweetie stands in May 2026. Not the streaming numbers or the collaborations or the multi-platinum certifications, but the specific and documented and now legally contested question of whether the woman behind the brand has been giving the people who invest in her what they were promised. That question will be answered in court. In the meantime, Her fans are watching, the music industry is watching, and the concert promoters who are deciding whether to invest in international bookings are most definitely watching. This channel covers stories like this every single day. Subscribe right now if you are not already subscribed. Turn on the notification bell and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Saweetie deliberately performed for a different promoter while keeping the deposit? Do you think there is an explanation that accounts for everything the lawsuit is alleging? And do you think her career can survive this on top of everything else? Drop it all below. I read every single comment, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow with a new story.